Hey there, everyone. Welcome to this week's astrological report for February 4 through February 10 of 2025. I hope you're all doing well. This week we do have a lot going on astrologically. The moon will be waxing all through Taurus in the first quarter moon square with the sun. That's exact by the overnight hours of tonight into tomorrow morning. The moon will be conjunct Uranus at the end of Taurus. The moon will then ingress Gemini, be waxing through Gemini, conjunct Jupiter. The moon will then ingress Cancer, be waxing all through Cancer, conjunct Mars. And then by the end of this report week, by next week, the moon will ingress Leo. And we'll be reaching a Leo full moon by next week. Okay, so as far as major aspects go this week, we do start things off today on Tuesday with Jupiter stationing direct. So I'll be talking about the meaning of that. That's going to really amp up everything in your Gemini area of life. And then today we only have one major aspect today, and that's the moon squaring Mercury later on today. So I'll be talking about that. And then, like I said, tomorrow is the first quarter moon here on Wednesday. And then we also have the North Node of Destiny reaching Neptune, which is quite rare, and that's going to be exact on Thursday. We then have Venus, which has now ingressed into Aries, making a sextile with Pluto. So there's some cooperation and empowerment here. I'll be talking about this Venus. It is one of the most important things happening in the sky right now, as Venus has just ingressed this world point. 0 degrees of Aries is the Aries point, and it's talking about a new beginning in a world context for everything about Venus. Remember, Venus is now in the retrograde shadow. So Venus is going to be going all the way to 10 degrees, going retrograde, coming back to the world point, coming back to Pisces, stationing direct on the Libra full moon by mid-April, and then Venus will once again ingress this world point at 0 Aries by the end of April into May. And by that point, Venus will be done with this entire process, and moving forward, the world will be moving forward in everything to do with Venus, which on the global level is talking about value and the economy, resources, trade, these things that are in a process for the next 3 months, which will pretty much determine the world's fate based on what plays out this next 3 months. But it's all starting now. It started yesterday, technically, as Venus ingressed to this point. So I'll talk more about that. It's also going to be affecting personal relationships as well. Individuals going through a process this next 3 months. Could be about relationship and partnership, and that's also on the global level as well. Nation states and their partnerships are going through a process of reconfiguration and an evaluation. But you could also be, perhaps some people could be evaluating personal relationships as well in this process. And then it could also be a financial process for some people this next 3 months as well. So just know that the end of April, everything is going to really start moving forward in powerful ways for May and beyond. Also, this could very well affect the markets. And over this next 3 months, there's a stronger potential for a downside, because we are at all-time highs already. We do have to go down eventually so we can go back up even higher. And I think that we're going to see some highs maybe perhaps in July, August, September, and beyond later on this year. So be prepared for a lot of adjustments financially, especially the next 3 months, but even for the first half of this year. Something is in process to figure out value, money, resources, relationships. So it could go down, but I think it's going to be a lot more about volatility for the next several months, because Uranus is also reaching a critical degree. It's now direct. It's going to be pushing forward to the end of Taurus, and that's critical. That's changes financially coming up here, and then by the summer, Uranus ingresses Gemini for a little bit. So things are going to get very volatile. So there'll be ups and downs, but I still feel like the strongest potential is a downside for the next few months, relatively speaking. And then you should prepare for it to go up, generally speaking, in markets. All right, so that's the Venus. I'll talk more about that for personal stuff going on for individuals as well as I go through this report. And then we have Mercury. Mercury, it has been trine Jupiter, but I feel like, we do have these two different vibes here. Like I said last week, we have the Aquarius, which is a little more detached, and it's all about the social, the community stuff going on in the world. That had a little more support. But then there's this Pisces vibe. And now that Venus is no longer in Pisces, it's moving away from that. Venus brought a lot of good stuff here to the Pisces realm, making it a lot better than it otherwise would be with Venus exalted in Pisces. But now that Venus is in Aries, it's just Saturn, Neptune, and this North Node all in Pisces. It's not as easy. So there's a lot of people that seem to be dealing with a lot of weight and pressure. And I get it. There's two different kind of vibes going on in the world. There's the Pisces vibe, which with Saturn there tends to be more heavy, more of a suffering kind of a vibe for some people, whether it's real or not. And then the other vibe is more of the Aquarius vibe, the people that are more detached, looking ahead, more optimistic with the alignment to Jupiter. But I do feel like there's this pretty big, two different sides going on here. And I do feel like the Pisces will probably get a little more heavier now that Venus is no longer there. It's just Saturn and Neptune in the North Node. These aren't exactly the most positive points here. But remember, this is an ending for Pisces and a new beginning when we get to this world global point with Saturn and Neptune right there. That is the true new beginning for kind of a new world order that's shaping up already from behind the scenes. And then it's right there on the world point coming up in the spring here. Neptune dips in and then Saturn follows up. So Venus is the first one here, that's showing the beginning of this big world change. In my opinion, it leads to positivity. You have to be open to, again, some adjustments that have to be made, and a lot of changes. People get fearful with changes. Overall, from my professional perspective of astrology, what I see coming for later in the year, later in the summer and into the fall of this year, it looks really positive. But from now until the beginning of summer, or from now until late June, this is going to be the most complicated, the most challenging part of life as we're going through a reconfiguration, restructuring certain things on a global level and then individually as well. So just know that things are going to really open up based on the changes that are taking place now through June. But Mercury is still in kind of a tough position. However, the fact that Jupiter stationing direct, rolled by Mercury, and Mercury's reaching the sun for the Cazimi, that means Mercury reaches the heart of the sun. This is a week of a lot of insights and kind of thinking differently, seeing things differently, a change of momentum with thoughts and ideas. So be on the lookout. There could be some strong insights or some important communication this week coming out on an individual level and then, of course, on a global level. But we also have Mercury making some difficult aspects as well. Mercury is being squared today by the moon. That's routine stuff. But then we see that Mercury will be in conjunct to Mars. That's not a good sign. That's going to be by February 7 here, Friday. And then Mercury is sextile Chiron. But then Mercury Cazimi the sun. And then by next Monday, Mercury is square Uranus. So that's likely to bring out surprises and unpredictability. And of course, with travel. The traveling thing in the airline industry is going to be a part of this new world that we're coming into. There's going to be so many reforms in our nation with different topics. I do believe that the airline industry will be a part of that. But the fact that there were so many accidents here with Mercury and Pluto, now that Pluto's in Aquarius, and this is an air sign, and the new era will be about the air signs as well. So there could be some issues, even some more issues, unfortunately, around travel. And that's air travel, yes, but also there's going to be new forms of travel with this new era, such as, high-speed train travel and infrastructure changes. And there's just going to be so much happening this next several years. But I do believe that there could still be some issues here now that Pluto's in Aquarius, an air sign. I don't know. I personally don't travel by air. The last time I did was to my father's funeral, which was, a rare exception. But unless I'm under the controls and flying it myself, I don't fly. I just don't give somebody else like control over my fate like that. But that's me, and I get it. Most people need to fly and do their thing, but it's risky. A lot of these planes are older. And plus we have old systems in place that need to be restructured. So I'm just saying that I do believe that's going to be a part of reform as well, but a lot of other things too. But just be a little extra careful this week with travel as well with this Mercury in a few hard aspects, especially perhaps this one, Mercury in conjunct Mars on February 7, and then Mercury square Uranus on February 10. But it's not just a one-day thing. It can still build up before that, during that, and after that a little bit. Remember, even last week, we saw an example of how aspects don't have to be perfect to show a major event. If they're with an orb, and the way I'm doing astrology here, yes, I point out when every aspect is exact, but you have to always know that when you see the time here on these aspects, it's still relevant before that as it's building up to that point. And then the time of the exact aspect is, yes, when it's peaking at its strongest, but then it's still in effect afterwards as the aspect starts to slowly separate. So just always keep that in mind, that it doesn't have to be a perfect aspect to manifest something. All right, so we got that Mercury going on, the Venus sextile Pluto, and then we have Mars trine Saturn. I told you about this last week, and it's perfecting this week by Sunday here on February 9. So Mars trine that Saturn, that's a great aspect for getting things done, being productive and a little more disciplined. But on the other hand, this Mars square Chiron has been in place all last week. It's still in place right now. It's such a slow aspect because Mars is now starting to slow down. Mars is backing up to 17 degrees. That's only a couple more degrees for the whole month of February. Mars is just kind of hanging out right here between 19 to 17 degrees. So that's an issue because normally Mars, is moving fairly quickly and will only last a day or two in an aspect. So that means if you have cardinal placements around 17 to 19 degrees, you're really wrapped up in this Chiron Mars square. And if it's a personal planet like your moon, your sun, your chart ruler, or Mercury, Venus, and that kind of stuff, then it can be very significant for you and be very difficult as well. So we do have a combination of both positive and negative going on. But I have to say another thing, and that is that in astrology, this is just the way it works out typically, is that the negative aspects tend to manifest more than the positive ones, especially if there's two kind of things going on, a positive and a negative aspect. The negative, it's more powerful. It's in our face. It's more challenging. We take for granted the easy stuff and we notice the difficult stuff. So even though there's still positivity in the air signs and the fire signs, generally speaking, there's this other stuff that's kind of heavy and this Mars square Chiron. This is not good for confidence. This is not good for, this can be an issue for injuries and accidents still. So the fact that Mercury, it's kind of in these hard aspects with Mars and Uranus, as Mars is slowing down in this square with Chiron, you should be extra careful of accidents and injuries. Just slow down and pay more attention. Watch your impulsiveness and things like that. But we still have positive, and even here on tomorrow after the first quarter moon, which is a little bit of a challenge, then there's nothing but sextiles and trines all day. So, there's the moon does its thing. The moon aligns in moments of easiness and then other times in a challenge all throughout the week, as you know, ups and downs. All right, so I'm going to be going through this chart here, but just looking at the chart, we have this Mars that's still talking about home and family stuff. So the fact that it's slowing down, it can also stir up a lot of family dynamics in certain cases, or wherever you have Cancer in your birth chart. Look at that area of your life. That's where the friction is with this Mars retrograde slowing down, square Chiron. So just be aware of that friction, emotional friction, especially, as this moon is starting to square Mercury and the sun today and tomorrow. The moon is ruling Mars, so there's some issues here that you have to be aware of, and just be careful and just try not to be overly impulsive. Luckily, the moon here in Taurus, exalted, typically doesn't want to get too radical, showing that people don't want to be too radical in this moment. But when the moon reaches Uranus, that could be a different type of mood coming in. All right, so let's start here on Tuesday, February 4. I'm going to go through the charts day by day now. And like I said, we only have two things going on for Tuesday. Don't get me wrong, all this stuff in the background is still going on. But as far as exact aspects, the main thing today is Jupiter stationing direct at 11 degrees. So if you have a personal planet at 11 degrees of Gemini, then you're really benefiting from this Jupiter stationing, because as you know, when a planet is stationing, either way, it's more powerful than normal. It's more amplified, for good or bad. So if you have a personal planet there, it depends on the planet. If it's Saturn, if it's Mars, that's a little bit of a different vibe compared to if it's Venus or your moon or your sun. But regardless, even if you don't have any personal planets at 11 degrees of Gemini, wherever you have Gemini in your birth chart, that's where everything is overly amplified, and there's a change of momentum in that area now that's going to start moving direct. And in the mundane context, this is going to really amplify things going on today with media and news and information, and pretty much all week long, because it's going to take Jupiter some time here to build up momentum forward. So it's just going to be stuck here for a few days, not really moving at all. But as it's doing that, Mercury will be Cazimi the sun, showing insight and awareness that Jupiter is responsible for, as well as its changing direction, ruled by Mercury, giving us insights and a change of perception and the way we're thinking, communicating. But it could very well show some big insights this week. And I would say even, surprising insights, surprising news, perhaps by next Monday, or a day or two around next Monday, with that Mercury square Uranus. But as far as Tuesday here goes, the sun and Mercury, it's in Aquarius. So that's where the main focus is, in the mind and the communications. It's all about the group, the community, politics, the future, organizations, groups of people gathering, protests, in some cases. But it's more about being detached. It is a little bit of a colder vibe. This is Aquarius season. It's winter here in the northern hemisphere, and it's ruled by Saturn. And Saturn is building up momentum now, and it's getting ready to move past its retrograde shadow, but not right now. More towards, basically, once we get towards the eclipse in March, Saturn is entering new territory. And the eclipse in March, by mid-March, that's going to be a really powerful eclipse for Trump and the U.S. and what's happening around mid-March as Saturn enters new territory and moves forward. But I should say this, and I'm going to make a video very soon here about the USA now that Jupiter's turning direct. And I'll talk more about Trump in that video. But even though this eclipse is going to be a little bit of something for Trump by mid-March, then Saturn turns into a trine with his own Saturn and his Venus. So I'm not seeing some big issues for Trump once he gets past mid-March. But from now until mid-March, he's going to have a few challenges building up stronger and stronger. until mid-March with that eclipse. But then it'll turn easy for him, and he'll move past any challenge that does come up. All right, so we have the moon here in Taurus today, exalted. So this is generally showing where the mood is, which is showing that people generally want to be more comfortable, more at peace, not causing problems or friction. Things are more want to slow down, and plus with Mars actually literally slowing down now, there's a little bit of a slower vibe. But overall, because this Aries point is being activated, Aries is about doing things quickly. And that's going to be about this new era. We're going to have a new structure, like a new world order that happens very quickly because of the Aries dynamic of it all. So in the bigger picture, things are happening very quickly this year in new ways. But in this moment here, the emotional energy, the circumstances, they want to be a little slower for the next couple of days, more indulgent, more pleasurable, more peaceful. But we are running into a challenge, as that moon will be square Mercury and then the first quarter moon. So let me put this on the hour. Okay, so as the moon is building today, it reaches that square with Mercury by 6:05 this evening on the West Coast. So tonight on the East Coast and early morning hours in the UK. And that just shows a little bit of tension between feelings, the mood, our thoughts. It can also stir up the need for communication and all that. It's just not smooth or easy or flowing between the mind and the heart, feelings and thoughts, expressing ourselves, being understood, understanding ourselves. So even though it can stir up a need for communication, I would kind of let it go this evening, tonight, because again, it may not be the most flowing time tonight. And then this aspect, it's just been sticking out here so strong. I mean, you have to look at this. This is super strong still. This is almost exact in the background. All week long, this Mars square Chiron. So unfortunately, that's there, but it's not going to affect everybody. Again, it's only the people that have personal planets in the cardinal signs around these degrees of 19, 18, 17. You're going to be most affected. But still, it's in the background for everybody. It can still show a little bit of edginess, moodiness is still in play. Impulsiveness is still there. You just have to be more mindful of what you're doing here, especially by this evening, but all week long with that Mars. So again, this is the main aspect for today, but with Jupiter stationing, everything is over the top for this week. That includes news, information, media, traveling, busyness out and about the streets, local community, neighborhood. Now, on the other hand, if you have anything like if you're taking a course, if you're learning things, this is great. There can be a change of momentum where if you're trying to learn something, it can start being easier. You can start to get it easier now, and the vibes will start to build in that way. So great for education, learning, teaching, networking with community and group. So that's usually where the positivity is with this, is going to be wherever you have Aquarius, Libra, and Gemini. Those are the more flowing, more positive sides of life right now. Although Libra is ruled by Venus, and now Venus in the retrograde shadow and in debilitation here does show partnership and relationship is going through something the next 3 months. Like I said, on a global level, it's nation states trying to figure out the value of each other and trade and all that kind of stuff that's not going to be fully ready for the long term until this whole process is over. But on a personal level, again, it could be people needing to evaluate relationship. Venus, ruling relationship and partnership, is in Aries, a more of an independent and individual placement about the self and what people want for themselves, not necessarily always thinking about the Libra with the Venus in Aries. Venus does bring some of these Libra vibes to the Aries. It's just not as smooth or easy because now that Venus is in Aries, it's being ruled by Mars, debilitated, retrograde, square Chiron. So some relationships could suffer in this process, but be careful of making decisions quickly with this, because this is more about a process that's starting to reevaluate and process your feelings, your thoughts, your desires, your needs around love, relationship type of stuff, or even an individual relationship that's in your life right now. For some people, this is a need to kind of let this next 3 months play out. Really, you're going to have the most insight about relationship and where you stand in love and relationship when we reach the Libra full moon by mid-April, ruled by Venus in Pisces, exalted, stationing direct with Saturn, willing to make commitments, either making commitments finally by after evaluating somebody, for the next 3 months here, or letting somebody go by that point. But the insights will be by April. And then for 2 weeks after that, Venus in Pisces, and then we'll finally ingress back to this world point by the end of April into May. And then Venus will move through the rest of the shadow and then enter new territory by May. So, like I said, it's just a time to be reflecting on a relationship. You may not need to make a decision right now. So I would kind of give it more time. Plus, now that Jupiter stationed direct and Mercury, Cazimi, the sun, that can give more insights, that's this week. There's still so much more time even after that. So that's just my opinion. Or for some people that might make an impulsive, quick decision about a relationship, an ending or even getting into one, then they could change their mind once Venus is going retrograde and in this process as well. So it's either way. And it can go either way. So it's just more of letting yourself go through this time to process it all before you're truly firm on your decision, perhaps. But if you need to make a tough decision, then you got to do what you got to do in the moment, and then you might have to reevaluate it later. But still, relationships aren't going to be at their best now with Venus in Mars sign and Mars in this really tough alignment. So be very careful in relationship as well, and on all levels of relationship, not just romantic, but this could be, talking about all kinds of, even family relationship stuff. So it's different for everybody, and maybe there is no relationship for you to process. And if that's the case, it can also talk about value in general, money and resources. So on the world level, of course, it's talking about the trade stuff that's going through this process. Making deals, trying to figure out a process between nation states and all that, and where we stand with partnership with nation states, because this is a point that could end up changing partnerships as well on a global level and alliances. But on an individual level, it could also be money and resources that people are needing to process as well this next few months. Where do you stand on value? Where do you stand on money and what you want, what you're going to get? So again, there's a need to kind of go through a process of evaluation. But in the short term, things can suffer because Venus is ruling the Taurus. It's no longer as strong as it was before. In the short term, though, this isn't permanent, so just keep that in mind. But there's still going to be ups and downs in the market despite Venus in this Aries spot. But I still think the odds are likely that this next 3 to 4 months could be maybe a downturn for the market. And then, like I said, perhaps by middle to late summer, things are going to start taking off and coming back to highs again. But we'll see. That's just from my perspective right now. And some things can change, the next few months, obviously. But we'll be taking a look at it as we go through all that through the next few months as well. So money, resources, and love and relationship and partnership, entering shadow and a process. Just keep that in mind. All right, so let's move this forward here and we get to Wednesday. On February 5, the moon is, first thing is square the sun. It's the first aspect of the day, and it's exact at midnight pretty much. So it's really Tuesday late night into Wednesday morning. So that's going to be, 3 a.m. on the East Coast. That's going to be early morning in UK. So first thing in the morning, basically for everybody, is the first quarter moon square sun. It's always typically a challenge, an emotional challenge, or circumstances could be challenged first thing on Wednesday morning for some people. It's not going to be the main vibe of the whole day, though, so keep that in mind because things do change, and there's a lot of easy flowing aspects overall here on Wednesday. But at first, we got to get through the challenge. So this is the first quarter moon, and the challenge comes back to the new moon in Aquarius. So goals, ambitions are now being challenged to move forward, to find solutions for issues or problems or blocks or obstacles. It's not a time to back down. It's not a time to retreat. It's a time to be innovative, creative, finding solutions to move things forward that were rooted on the new moon. So keeping your dreams alive, keeping the work alive by putting effort into things and not running into a challenge and then just being like, okay, I guess it doesn't work, I'm defeated, and giving up. That's not the phase that we're in. So move forward. But for some people, they might not want to. The mood might be off in the morning. People might have to do something that they don't want to do, something like that, or just a mood change, a feeling. Things generally aren't as flowing and cooperative, but then we see that the moon is going to be applying a conjunction to Uranus as well. So it can also be more of an unpredictable day, surprises, change of plans, change of mood. Just be open, flexible, and adaptable. And this is going to show the market. It's going to be very volatile Wednesday as well. Let's see. Let's move this forward here. Now, with that said, the moon is also sextile Saturn at right after the square to the sun. So I think it quickly can start to stabilize. But then there's this, Uranus factor that could still show some inconsistency, changes, unpredictability, surprises. But it's also the need to be innovative and creative, stepping outside the box, trying new things, stuff like that. So that's going to be what we're experiencing. There can still be some maturity in this process, some stability. It can go either way. It's going to be volatile because there's stability and there's instability all at the same time here. And then the moon is sextile Mars right before it's conjunct Uranus here on Wednesday morning. So this is pretty early still. But for the people in Europe, the UK, it's, the afternoon. Moon sextile Mars gives an emotional need to be active and busy, taking care of things. Plus, remember, we still have this Mars-Saturn alignment, a trine all week long. Great for being productive, building things, restructuring things on a foundational level, home and family, property and immigration. Of course, on the global level, and especially the USA, this Mars in Cancer, talking about immigration, and really changing foundational things here for the U.S., especially considering the U.S. is a Cancerian country. But overall, it's needed. It's definitely needed. In fact, all these changes in government is pretty surprising. It's almost like unbelievable that it could actually be happening. And there are big changes happening in government and on foundational levels for sure. All right, so moon sextile Mars can be a little more impulsive as well, but luckily the moon exalted kind of stabilizes things. Doesn't want to be as impulsive here. But then the moon is conjunct Uranus, which is a little more impulsive as well. Like I said, unpredictable, surprises, change of mood, change of plans. So just be open for things to be a little more changeable as you go through the day on Wednesday. And then we see that the moon is going to sextile Neptune, align with the nodes of fate, and then change signs. So moon sextile Neptune from the end of Taurus shows that in this moment here on Wednesday evening, Wednesday night, for some people, there's a need to indulge, to escape into more pleasure from behind the scenes to your own world, what you want to be doing here. can be more imaginative and creative. Could be film, photography, movies, drugs, alcohol, just whatever people like to do on their own behind the scenes at night on Wednesday. So more of a chill vibe there. After kind of a chaotic day, perhaps, it gets a little more chill at night with that sextile. And then with the moon aligned with the nodes of fate, it could be a fateful night for whatever reason. We see a grand trine slash kite in place here with the nodes of fate connected to Pluto, group, community, transformation. Neptune and the north node of destiny shows people are having to deal with the end of illusions. So it can be disillusionment. It can be like seeing a new perception of reality. There's two different realities that are starting to converge. That's all destined for the next few months here with this Saturn Neptune. Neptune has been in this Pisces since 2011 into 2012 with a certain reality for the world. And now Saturn is a different reality, a more grounded reality that's about to converge with Neptune, and destiny is pointing towards it all, saying that whatever's happening here behind the scenes with this new reality, this disillusionment for some people, a change of reality in a sense. That's what's happening. We are coming into a new reality for the long term, and this is only the transition moment for 2025. So anyway, there's that going on. And then the moon connected to it with destiny. So whatever's happening could have a long-term effect on the future here on Wednesday night. And then the moon is trine that south node that's just come into Virgo for the next year and a half. South node in Virgo is all about letting go and purging in your Virgo area of life. So what is Virgo for you? What area of life is that? It could be a money house for some people. It could be a partnership house for some people. It could be home. Whatever house it is, that's an area that needs to change, that needs to be purged, letting go of old stuff in that area that's no longer needed. And then the eclipse by mid-March will be in that Virgo area of life, showing something coming to a head and having consciousness about things that were hidden in that area that are ending. So again, purging, letting go, organizing in new ways, purification. That's all the Virgo South Node stuff going on that the moon is connected to on Wednesday night as well. All right. So Thursday, February 6th, the moon changes signs. The moon does change signs late on Wednesday night, but you're going to notice it more by Thursday here, the overnight hours into Thursday morning. There's a change of mood and circumstances now that the moon is in Gemini. So the moon is actually forming a minor grand trine with Venus and Pluto. So there's a moment of empowerment here. And even the moon sextile Venus shows a different mood that's more detached, more communicative now. Relationships don't want to be as sensitive in this phase anymore as they were with Venus in Pisces. Also, when Venus was in Pisces next to Saturn, that's the tough love vibe. Technically, it's still within orb a little bit, but it's going to be decreasing that a little bit, but it's going to come back. And that's overall the bigger theme of everything is tough love in this phase as well. So now that Venus is in Aries, less sensitive, less attached, wanting more freedom and independence within relationship. But in the circumstances here, in the overnight hours, Thursday morning, there's an opportunity to be more satisfied, more pleasured, communicating the things, indulging in any kind of pleasure. And then the moon trine Pluto is empowerment. And now Venus is building up that sextile with Pluto as well, which can show easy transformation for this global trade situation, making deals that are coming through with the politics, the group, the community, the organizations, and in personal relationships with friends and community in your life. There's a better alignment happening there now that the moon is in Gemini. So now this is all about fire and air signs. So now the moon in Gemini is in a much more better harmony position with Aquarius again. And the moon is building towards a conjunction with Jupiter that's still very slow, trying to build up momentum direct at 11 degrees of Gemini. So big mood of change of mood. And now that the moon is in Gemini, generally people want to be more lighthearted, a little more playful, but more curious, more communicative. It's much more about the intellectual side of life, group and community, short trips and traveling, networking with people, so it's all about this air and this social dynamic that's now building up here for Thursday. The moon will run into some challenges here eventually with Saturn, Neptune, and the nodes. But before it does that, it runs into Jupiter, which is going to be one of the better aspects. Yeah, that'll be the next aspect as we're going forward here. On Thursday, the moon reaches Jupiter at 11 degrees, 11:11. And so this is big. Everything is big on Thursday evening, Thursday night. Generally, it should be positive. The positive vibes, yeah, they're going to last, I think, overall. I think overall it's a positive night, generally speaking. We still have background stuff, though, that could still, show that there's issues for some people in the background, depending on personal charts. And plus, we also see that the sun here is building the in conjunction with Mars, plus Mercury will. So this is only a moment here before things get a little more critical, perhaps. But as the moon is conjunct Jupiter on Thursday night, that's super, more of an optimistic mood, more of a playful, chatty mood. So people are super communicative in this moment here on Thursday night. It's actually a great night to express yourself, to write emails, do phone calls, or just generally communicate in the evening hours here, 6 o'clock hour, perhaps. Or just to be out and about. The environment, the circumstances should be pretty decent in that moment. But it's all about news and media and information and learning, curiosity, variety for Thursday, and especially by Thursday night with the big mood, big needs on Thursday night as well. And then we see that the North Node reaches Neptune here. And that is going to be pretty much late on Thursday into the overnight hours of Friday morning. And that, again, this is just destiny pointing towards this Neptune. So this can show, remember, wherever the North Node goes, there's a push, there's an increase to whatever it's touching. And Neptune, or the North Node is in between Neptune and Saturn now. Destiny. In between these two different realities that are going to start converging this next few months, that leads the world to this very big new beginning. So the North Node and Neptune, it's pointing towards, again, it's going to be different for different people in different situations. But in general, some people have to go through disillusionment about a reality that's dying as a new reality is being established from Saturn. Other people, it's talking about developing a higher power, but this is kind of the end. Like, we've had this opportunity to be connected to a higher power, spirituality, metaphysics, all these things of Neptune, sensitivity. We've been doing this since 2011, 2012. So it is an ending, but that's why it can be a little confusing. Some people might think, oh, we're supposed to do all this Pisces thing. This is mainly cleaning the slate for Pisces eventually, but it's all destined. It's fateful. It's going to have a long-term effect on the future. So with North Node Neptune, in other ways, it can show storms, floods. In some cases, the West Coast here has been getting hammered for a week, I think already, or several days. We've been having nonstop weather. But it can be other places as well. And there can be some uncertainty that is a part of this too. There's things that we don't have clarity on just yet. There's still a lot of stuff behind the scenes that hasn't fully come out yet. By the time that Saturn and Neptune get out of Pisces, and then we have more Pisces eclipses, we're going to know about a lot of things that were happening this past, 12 years or so, about conspiracies, scandals, things that were hidden behind the scenes, secrets, and all this kind of stuff is going to be coming out more and more. But it can be pointing towards scandalous things going on in the background as well, and then serious world things with Saturn there. So in other cases, for some people, it can be a push to work with producing and creating music, film, photography, videos, anything like that. It's destined for a lot of people. So if you're working with anything like Neptune, which usually is a producing planet based on, what I see with people, again, definitely with music and stuff like that, but also even like Hollywood and film and photography and all that. If you start something in those kind of ways, doing those type of projects, it can be almost destined and get a big boost when it comes to creativity and things like that. This is also talking about the ocean, the global community on the oceans. So there could be some ocean stuff here going on, like seeing new things, new discoveries. This is also kind of a critical point here, and I'm going to put this out on my USA video, but I am expecting a major water event here for 2025 through 2026 in the Northwest. Yeah, this point right here where Neptune is can sometimes show big earthquakes or tsunamis, ocean events, and I believe that's going to be on the West Coast the next 2 years. I haven't timed it perfectly yet, but there's much bigger odds for big ocean events coming up, and generally flooding events in the spring here probably. So all this Pisces stuff is getting amped up by the North Node. All right. And there's other things you can look into that, but that's just generally speaking here. Let's move this forward into Friday, February 7. And we start things off with the moon. The moon is, let's start with the sun here. The sun is in conjunct to Mars. And then Mercury is pretty much in conjunct to Mars as well on this day. So there's a lot of adjustments that have to be made to edginess and friction and conflict and home and family stuff. And then on the global or the USA level, it's immigration stuff that's being stirred up here in a little more of a conflict here perhaps on Friday. So be extra careful on Friday because, again, the Mars square Chiron is still in place, plus an in conjunction from Mercury and Sun. So be extra careful of traveling, of everyday environment type of stuff. Just be more cautious and pay attention and slow down with what you're doing. But at least the moon is in good harmony with Mercury and the Sun. And also we see that this is where Venus is sextile Pluto exactly. So there can be some powerful deals going on the global level in the world between countries on Friday here. Well, even Thursday into Friday perhaps. And then on individual levels, Venus sextile Pluto can be a strong, passionate desire for something, either for a person, place, or thing, but strong desire, wanting to get it quickly, being a little more impulsive, being a little more intense, obsessive even potentially, with some sort of a desire that people have, generally speaking, on Friday. But it's a sextile. It's not out of control. There's not a big power dynamic with it necessarily. And there can be an easier transformation to value, money, resources. So Friday is a mixed bag. There's all kinds of different aspects going on here. There's quite a few, actually. So it could be all over the place, different vibes, different moods as the day goes on. But the moon is trine Mercury and trine the Sun, but square Saturn all at the same time. So again, there's a mixed bag. There's both positive and negative all at the same time here. So the square to Saturn shows something serious, something heavy that we're adjusting to potentially on Friday. But then on another level, the more social level, the networking level, or education, teaching, group and community stuff, that's where the moon is more flowing with Mercury and the sun, where the focus is. And then the moon is sextile Chiron, and then Mercury in conjunct to Mars. So be extra careful with traveling and transportation and even technology. There could be some glitches here going on with technology. Something like that is possible. Sun sextile Chiron is putting a more of a positive light on this Chiron, even though the sun is not happy with this Mars down here squaring Chiron. So it's a mixed bag. You know, for some people, there can be a more of a confidence, more confident in your independence and your individuality. But there can be some issues with action still. But Mars still has that one opening to Saturn that shows that there's still an opening to be productive, get the job done, working on things. But Mars is still a wild card. Just remember that. You know, the friction-based stuff in life right now is this Mars retrograde and debilitation square Chiron. And then the moon is T-squared the nodes of fate and then square Neptune for the rest of the day. So it's a fateful day. The world is at a crossroads, especially here on Friday night into Saturday morning. So the moon square the nodes of fate and that Neptune all at the same time late on Friday is kind of a confusing night and uncertainty type of vibe. It could be a storm, weather events. There can be some traveling issues here. Something fateful could be taking place that can have a long-term effect on the future. The world could be at a crossroads for some reason here. There can be just doubts, confusion, uncertainty, questions. There can be some, be a little more careful of what you hear, what you feel, what you think on late Friday night. I would give it time to process whatever's coming up, if anything at all, because you might not be clear about it and you want to make sure you're seeing it in a true reality. You can also just show that things are starting to get a lot more sensitive now, and that's what's going to change is the mood, and the circumstances are about to change into sensitivity. So this could be the beginning of some hypersensitivity. People might want to retreat into their own world behind the scenes, and then that's what kind of changes as we get into Saturday morning, February 8th. The moon changes signs and ingresses Cancer for a change of mood. Now, the moon is happy here. It does have to make an adjustment eventually to this Pluto of the outer world, the politics, the group, the community stuff going on, because now the moon in Cancer is more about your inward life, your family, your home, wanting to be safe and secure and comfortable, wanting comfort food, and just being in a better place as you get to Saturday. So people are more protective and guarded now that both the moon and Mars are in Cancer. But even though the moon is somewhat happy here, it's okay in the beginning, and yeah, it'll be okay, even though it will reach Mars eventually. But when it reaches Mars, it'll be trine Saturn with Mars. So that can be a beneficial transit coming up for property, home, real estate, family stuff that needs to be worked on in some way. And then on the world level, mundane level, it's immigration. The homeland becomes a big focus for these next 2.5 days. And what this Mars is doing, stirring up things, cutting things out, changing things on this foundational level. So it's not as peaceful as normally it will be when the moon is moving through here. And that's just because Mars is here. So it's a little more emotionally agitated, a little bit, but there's still some cooperation in play. And yeah, there's not that many good aspects here on Saturday morning because the moon is also in conjunct to that Pluto, adjusting to the power dynamic in the outer world versus your inner world. And then the moon is square Venus. So this is first thing on Saturday morning. It won't be all day on Saturday, but first thing in the morning, a little bit of a clash of preferences and needs, not always feeling quite satisfied or content. The moon here is about family relationships, home, and property stuff. Venus is in more of this independent position. So there's a clash between the self, independence, freedom versus home and family stuff, potentially here on Saturday morning. This could show a little bit of some clashing or tension within family relationships on Saturday early morning. Or just your own preferences and desires for that day could be clashing as well. You might want to be independent, doing something on your own, but there might be something about something else that you might have to be involved in. But really, even the fact that Venus is in Aries, it still comes back to Mars in Cancer, ruled by the moon. So everything is still coming back to the home and the inner world life and being guarded and protective and safe and secure. More of a chill mood that comes in, like I said, that wants comfort and safety and security. The last aspect will be Mercury sextile Chiron. So some communication that takes place here on Saturday can have a healing effect on certain people. Words can be healing in this case. Words can be hurtful, but because there's a sextile, it's likely to manifest more as feeling more confident with your thinking, with your words, with your thoughts and communication style. But Mercury is still at odds with this Mars, so still be careful with traveling and with group activity. All right, let's get to this. Well, let's move this forward through the day on Saturday, and it's just this moon kind of doing its own thing here, applying towards Mars. Let's look at Saturday night. So Saturday night on February 8th, you should be cautious. You're going to see the moon next to Mars up in the sky. Well, it's not. I can't tell if it's showing on this chart, but you're going to see the moon and Mars here next to each other. That's usually not the greatest symbol. Mars is super bright red, glowing up there. It could show some violence or some issues on Saturday night, but I can't guarantee it. Just be extra careful, know your surroundings. But plus the mood wants to be more at home. It's not, usually the mood doesn't really want to be, super social in this position here. But of course, that's not going to be everybody. So the people that are out and about Saturday night, just be a little extra cautious of your surroundings. All right, let's get this to Sunday on February 9. This is where the moon is conjunct Mars. But this is also the day that Mercury and the Sun are cazimi. So this is a day that could produce some insights and awareness, seeing things more clearly, understanding things more clearly of what's going on here on Sunday. So be on the lookout for insights on that day, or all week for that matter. And then this is where Mars is perfectly trine Saturn, and the moon is conjunct Mars, and the moon is trine Saturn, all at the same time here. And this is going to be in the afternoon hours of Sunday. So there's a positive and there's a negative. The negative is the Mars moon square Chiron, but then the moon Mars trine Saturn, and it's more powerful probably because, this is somewhat of a rare aspect when Mars and the Saturn are trine like that. It's more cooperative and flowing for action and being more responsible in the way that you take action and work. Again, it's usually more of a productive alignment for people to get things done. So the moon is showing, people's mood is a little bit fiery and passionate and impulsive on Sunday, but because of the trine to Saturn, that can help moderate it somewhat counterbalance that tendency somewhat, perhaps, but I can't guarantee it because there's still that square to Chiron of impulsiveness. Venus is still in Aries of impulsiveness. The moon with Mars can be impulsive still. So just be extra careful, slow down, take it easy, work, but do it in a slow, methodical way. You can get the job done here if you're focused on a project or a work thing, especially, around home stuff, home and family stuff here, property stuff. It's a great day for work. But still some sensitivity, some injuries, and some accidents are still possible. And then the moon is in conjunct to the sun and Mercury, cazimi, as the day goes on here on Sunday evening. So the mood down here, more sensitive, inward, emotional, guarded, protective, doesn't really vibe with this social dynamic going on in Aquarius with the group and the community and being more detached, when the moon in Cancer is more attached than detached. So again, just having to adjust between what our mood is, where the circumstances are, how we feel versus what we're thinking, communicating about, what our focus is. Two different vibes going on there that we adjust to. Usually not the most smooth or flowing dynamic. But then the moon turns into a sextile with Uranus for Sunday night. Be careful on Sunday night as well, since the moon is next to Mars still. But with the outlet to Uranus, there's an outlet to be more comfortable with innovation and change on the foundation, home, family, homeland, immigration, stuff going on, or just creating changes in your home environment in some way here could go good on Sunday night. But we have the sun and Mercury building up a tight square with Uranus now. And that will be the following day on Monday, February 10. The moon is at the last degrees of Cancer first thing in the morning here. But the moon is aligning with the nodes of fate for the first aspect. So it's a fateful day on Monday. Whatever happens has long-term effects on the future. The mood starts off a little more sensitive and inward and guarded, but will quickly change for the rest of the day on Monday into a more outward, passionate, social, dramatic dynamic that's building up to the full moon that's going to be square Uranus. So here we go. Moon trine Neptune before the change into Leo shows this outlet really early in the morning on Monday to be more sensitive, to be escaping into your own world behind the scenes, but then everything changes, like I said, as this moon ingresses Leo. Right about there. First, it's mostly all day on Monday is this new vibe of moon in Leo, ruled by the sun in Aquarius, squaring Uranus. So everything gets way more dramatic by next week, it looks like. This will also affect the market by next week in a major way. Probably to the downside, I would imagine, but we'll have to see how things go by the end of this week. And then it's just going to be more dramatic, more passionate, more bold and outward and social. This is way more social now because the Leo-Aquarius opposition is one of the most social dynamics in the zodiac. But it's also, the moon has a lot of light on it. It's building to fullness. And this is also, so Mercury square Uranus is going to be a day of unpredictability, surprises, and news and information and media, markets, and other dynamics. So there could be a little bit of a shock or surprise going on, or unpredictability, having to adjust. There could be some insights, some surprise communication and news that changes something, of how we're thinking and looking at something. We're not as comfortable now as we come into next week with innovation and change. We're not as comfortable or easily doing that. So the challenge is how to make changes happen and still maintain stability, because major changes are going to be happening next week, but it could show some instability in different ways. So the goal is to create changes, be innovative and creative, but not create chaos, and to maintain that stability. So people are more passionate and dramatic with their expressions and their mood. Generally, people want to be more happy when the moon comes into Leo. You know, it is much more of an outward, social, uplifting mood with people. You know, people that have moon in Leo, they just love to socialize and express themselves and laugh and be happy and joyful. But if there's a negative thing going on at the same time, then they can be dramatically negative at times. So the only reason I'm thinking that there could be more of a negative flair to this by next week is because the squares to Uranus. But otherwise, there's still a mood that wants to be happy, joyful, creative, and fun here. Oh, I totally skipped over the Super Bowl on Sunday there. Yeah, bear with me. I'm going to back up just to look at the Super Bowl on Sunday as well. Most of you probably aren't into it anyway. But on Sunday, I would think that there could be an injury. Maybe there's going to be a major injury with a player on the game. That's just one prediction. I don't know. It might not happen, but there could be an injury. But as far as people and enjoyment goes, really, there's not that many great aspects for the Super Bowl. The moon will be in conjunct to the sun and Mercury, and then the moon is square Chiron. But that's right in the beginning, so maybe there won't be an injury. But I don't know. We might have to make an adjustment. I think for the most part it should be okay, but it's not the greatest. It could be better as far as the mood and how people are feeling, you know, on that day with the game. All right, we'll go back to Monday here now. And the moon is opposite that Pluto. Remember, that happens now every time the moon comes into Leo. So back on Monday here. So Mercury square Uranus. I just think Monday is going to be kind of crazy and wild. And maybe that whole week next week is just going to be volatile and surprising, unpredictable, a little bit dramatic and intense, powerful mood and circumstances going on Monday. But the moon does align with Venus real quick here for a trine on Monday evening, Monday night for others. So that's more of feeling, okay, things are starting to calm down a little bit, but the sun is still building that square. Now, there's still an edgy vibe in the background, but there's more of a capability of being more pleasured and satisfied and enjoying yourself on Monday night, perhaps. But still be very careful on Monday night if you're in a social group community setting, because that's where the friction is taking place. And again, this is building up to the Leo full moon by next week. All right. So that's what I have for you guys. I think it's a mixed bag. Like I said, there's both positive and challenges, and that's usually the case. It's just the darn negative tends to be more powerful, you know, and show more. But this list will be written out in the description below for you, so you can look at when these times are exact and then just adjust it to your time based on California time. All right, folks, thanks for watching. I hope it's helpful. Appreciate you returning for another video, and I wish you the best. Take good care.